Program design tools are the tools used to develop a program. A program is an expression of an algorithm in a programming language. This module will provide the different program design tools. It will cover the following. Lesson 1, Algorithm. Lesson 2, Pseudocode. Lesson 3, Flowchart.
An algorithm is a sequence of steps to solve a problem, or it is an ordered set of definite steps that produces a result and terminates in a finite time. What is the characteristics of an algorithm? An algorithm may or may not require an input. An algorithm may depend on the given or provided value output. Each algorithm is expected to produce at least one result. Definiteness. Each instruction must be clear and ambiguous. Finiteness. If the instructions of an algorithm are executed, the algorithm should terminate after finite number of steps. Advantages of an algorithm. It is a stepwise representation of a solution to a given problem, which make it easy to understand. An algorithm uses a definite procedure. It is not dependent on any programming language, so it is easy to understand for anyone without programming knowledge. Every step in an algorithm has its own local sequence, so it is easy to debug. How to write an algorithm. Step 1. Define your algorithm input. Many algorithms take in data to be processed, example to calculate an area of a rectangle. So this need input, which is the height and the width. Remember the characteristics of an algorithm. As mentioned earlier, that input may or may not be required. This is applied in some instances that if a problem has a given values, input may not be required. However, if a problem does not have figures or numbers, we need to get input from the user. Step number 2, define the variables. Algorithm algorithm variables allow you to use its form more than its place. We can define two variables for rectangle, which is the height and the width, or we could define it as h and w. In chapter 1, variable is defined. As mentioned in the definition, it says that a variable is a container which represents a value in a program. Variables can store different types of data, including numeric values. Numeric values could be integer, that could be float, anything that has floating points, or a numeric value that is a double, or again double is has floating points. A variable can store single character, which is letter T, or letter B, single character itself, and a text string, meaning to say a sentence. The value of a variable can change all throughout a program. We may use a literal representation of a variable is like a container in which you could use. In one container you could put cookies, in other container you could put marshmallow, in other container you could put nuts, and a lot more. So in variable, in naming variable, it should be meaningful. Naming variable should be like naming the first number. You could name the first number for variable num1. Also, for naming num2 or second number, you could name it as variable, or you could have a variable name for num2. Say for instance you are going to get the sum of two numbers. To be able to catch the value of the result of the operation, you may use sum as a variable name. Step number 3, outline algorithms operations. Use input variable for computation purpose. Example, to find the area of a rectangle. Multiply the height and the width variable and store the value in a new variable name, which is the area. So here, we could be able to use h for height and w for width. And a, for example, a for area. But since the word area is small to type, you could use a as a variable name instead. Output the result of your algorithm's operation. In case output will be the value stored in variable, and if input variables describe a rectangle, h and width has a value of 2 and 3, algorithm would output the value of 6. Say for instance we have here area is equals to h times width. So 6, because the value of h is 2 multiplied to 3 is 6.
Let's take a look on this example. Write an algorithm to calculate the area of a rectangle. So remember, when we're talking about algorithm, these are series of steps that starts with step 1, which is start, and ends with the last step that has a label of end. So in this example, we have step 1, start, step 2, input H and W. So in this example, as mentioned earlier, that input H is for height and W is for width. Meaning to say, in this step number 2, we are referring on defining our variables. H for height and W for width. Step number 3, in step number 3, we are going to compute the area by multiplying H and W. For step number 3, we are going to decide here what operations to be used. Step number 4, we are going to display or output whatever the result of the computation. Since we have another variable, which is area, if we're going to multiply H and W, variable area will hold the value of the result of operation. Say example, H is 2, W is 3. If we're going to multiply it, the area will be 6. Then, step number 5, end. As you can see in this example that, or in this problem, that there is no value provided. So meaning to say, we need input value for H and W. Otherwise, if we will not be asking for input, step number 3 will not be executed because there is no value for H and W. If there is no value for H and W, what would be the value that we will be multiplying? That's the question. Now, for instance, if we have the value of H as 2 and the value of W is 3, we are now going to multiply it. Then, the result of the computation will be catched by the variable area. Then, it will be displayed. Then, it will go to step number 5, which is end. Step 1, start. Step 2, enter number for the variables num1 and num2. Step 3, perform the sum of two numbers using the equation. Sum is equals to num1 plus num2. Step number 4, print sum. Step number 5, end. Take note of the following. There should be a congruency in naming and formatting variables. Num1 is given in num1 with big letter N is not equals to num1 written in all small caps. Big letter A is not equals to small letter A because these are case sensitive. Now, sum written in big letter is not equals to sum written in capital letter S followed by U and M. Example number 3, write an algorithm to compute and display the average and the product of three numbers. Step number 1 for the solution of the algorithm. Step number 1 is start. Step number 2, read the values of num1, num2, and num3. Meaning to say, we are waiting here, or we are requiring here the user to input 3 numbers. In step number 3, perform the average of and the product of the 3 numbers using the equations. First, the average by summing up the 3 variables and divide it by 3. Then, get the product by multiplying all 3 variables. Step number 4, as per instruction, says that the algorithm will display the average and the product of 3 numbers, meaning to say the result of operation. So, in step number 4, we are going to use the word print or use the word display, average, and product. Meaning to say, print, we're going to get the variable name of average, comma, variable name for the product. And lastly, step number 5 is end. For naming variables, I would like you to emphasize or take note on the following. Big letter A is not equals to 2 big letter A's or 2 double caps lock letter A's. And also, it is not equals to big letter A is not equals to small letter A. Meaning to say, this is not congruent. And when we go through with coding, there are some computer languages that are case sensitive. Meaning to say, at this early moment, we are now practicing or using the correct format for variable naming.